Hi, welcome to Losing Faith, Finding Spirit. We are talking about relationship red flags, things to look out for to kind of recognize if you are in a toxic, abusive, narcissistic type relationship. How do you identify those and some of the red flags to kind of be aware of? Today's red flag is constant questioning. Now, questions are how we communicate as people. You ask a question, you answer a question, you share information. Questions are great for empathy and learning and understanding. But in the mouth of an abuser and the mouth of a toxic and narcissistic person, questions become a tool of manipulation and a weapon. Now, how does this look like in real life scenarios? Well, my ex was a master of the question game. And how this works is they might ask a question and it seems totally innocent. And like you think this person's trying to understand you better. But really what they're asking is because they have an agenda. And behind that question is a desire to either control, make you feel what they want you to feel, think what they want you to think, or to belittle you and invalidate you. And these questions can start off very innocent enough, very simple, but they really, depending on your answer, it doesn't matter. The questions don't stop. And that's the thing that it's hard to explain without giving an exact example. So let me try to think of a couple examples from my own experience. There was a time where there was some political unrest. I had read something in the news and it was upsetting to me. So I came in and was talking to my ex, back when we were still married several years ago. And I was telling him about what I had read on the news and some of the fallout of some of the experts and things that I had been reading and how it was making me feel because, I'm trying to tell, hey, this thing's upsetting. I need you to help me. Tell me it's going to be okay. His response was, where'd you read that? Are you sure that's what it really means? Who said that? Do you really think that person's trustworthy? Is that really reputable? That doesn't sound right. And what do you mean? What information? And then it would be like very specific questions. And I'm talking really vague because I don't remember specifics of this conversation. Obviously, it was a long time ago. And, but the questions were like very specific to what I was talking about. Like questions that, unless you had a PhD in the discourse of the conversation, you could not answer. I could not answer. And if I said I couldn't answer the question, if I could not answer his questions, he would be like, you don't know what you're talking about. And even if I said, I don't really know, but the information is available, like you can look it up. No, he'd get mad and be like, you don't know what you're talking about. You're just upset. You need to get over it. You need to stop letting these things bother you. And then that would start the belittling phase. And even though I was the one that initiated the conversation, when I walked away, I felt worse. I felt absolutely worse than when I went in. And I went in to ask for comfort. I needed to be comforted and to feel like everything's okay. But I walked out feeling like I was, overreacting. I wasn't good enough. I'm a mess. And then I ended up feeling like more out of control. Thankfully, at this point in my self-healing journey, it didn't really weigh me down, and I was able to go and be my own comforter and take some time and really work on myself and be okay. And then eventually I learned to stop going to him with anything that meant something to me. Like I was sharing some information about my friends. My friends were having, two of my friends were having some weird drama between them, and it was upsetting me, and I was getting pulled into it, and I was sharing that information, and he got mad and was like, don't share that information with me. Does that matter to me? Is that going to change my view of these people? What do you think of, and so anytime it was about me towards the end of the relationship, he would belittle and invalidate. So when it comes to these questions, the agenda is to make you feel small, to make you feel like you don't know what you're talking about, to make you question your own reality. And it's some of these questions are a form of gaslighting because they are blatantly trying to ask you, like, what are you talking about? You don't know what you're saying. And it's trying to undermine your knowledge of the subject, whatever that is. There were other times where it would be a question where I didn't start the conversation, he did. And it would be like, hey, I've got a real quick thing I want to talk to you about. Anytime he said, hey, I got a real quick thing, or I just need a quick minute of your time, I knew that we were in for it. Every time. And it took me a very long time to realize that that was a pattern. And what this is called is baiting. Now, the questions are meant to bait and lure you into interacting and falling into those same patterns, to where the abuser walks away feeling like they're either in control, that they are stronger than you, that they are smarter than you, that they know more than you, and they walk away feeling bigger, and you walk away feeling smaller and like insignificant. Sometimes these questions are even to push blame off of them, to get you showing your weaknesses or offering some kind of loophole to make you feel like maybe you're hiding something, and just basically to wear you down. These sometimes can lead into interrogation tactics where the abuser is just asking you in like a barrage of questions that you cannot answer. Here's an example too. So our child went to the doctors. He would go to the doctors, had some allergy stuff done. And I told my ex the results because I am the one who takes our child to the doctors. I am the one who does all of this stuff with our child. And I said, here's the results. Here's what the doctor said we need to do. That's the information. He would ask, why did the doctor say that? That doesn't make sense. What is going on? And if I couldn't answer, because I'm not a doctor, I can't answer. They were questions that were completely beyond my level. I gave the information already. This is what the doctor said. This is what we're supposed to do. And that wasn't good enough. The questions kept coming and they kept coming. And if I couldn't answer, and if I made up answers, or if I tried to reason and think, well, why would the doctor say that? And it didn't matter. It didn't matter because the whole point of him asking those questions was to cause an argument, was to cause a fight, was to cause us to get emotionally heightened so that he could feel smarter, he could feel better, and ultimately, like, he didn't want to do what the doctor said. He didn't want to do it. It was a hassle to him. The idea of it was just not something he wanted to deal with. And so he's trying to question away what we have to do. And that happened all of the time. Like, if he didn't like the answer, if he didn't like what was happening, he would question it and question and question and question to try to get it to change to what he liked. And I started to realize that pattern, that he's asking this question not because he cares, not because he wants to know. He literally doesn't like my answer. If my answer is no, he would ask a bunch of questions to try to get me to change my answer. Because if he wanted a yes, or if I said yes and he wanted to know, he'd ask a bunch of questions to try to get me to change my answer. That was a pattern and a cycle, and it was exhausting. I've said this before, it's exhausting. It wears you down, and that's what it's meant to. It's meant to wear you down. It's meant to make you feel weak. It's meant to make you feel insecure. It's meant to make you feel like you don't know things that you know. You walk in being confident and like, I know what I'm talking about. I was the one freaking at the doctors. This is what I know. I was there. You weren't. I would end up ultimately that kind of thing. You can call the doctor yourself and ask those questions. If you have, and I finally got to that point where I wouldn't even bother interacting with that. I stopped that cycle. He'd start asking questions and I'd stop him and be like, I can't answer your questions. You are free to call the doctor. You have the same information I do. You can call and ask those questions to the doctor. I'm not a doctor. And that, of course, he didn't like that. He'd try to be like, oh, you're so immature. You can't even have a conversation. You're the one who went. You knew when we were going, you could have come too. Like, there was so many, and that's the thing. They ask questions that they either already know the answer to, or they could easily find out themselves. But they are not asking because they want the information. It's not about the question. It's not about the information. It's about fighting. It's about arguing. It's about being in control and feeling strong and smart. And it took a very long time for me to realize this. Because questions, like I said, questions are normal. They're healthy. When kids start to really learn about the world, their biggest question, why? Why? But I realized that, like there was a time where we were separated. We had our child's birthday, and, you know, our child was turning, I think, 5 or 6. And we've had how many birthdays up until this point? And we've always done where they open the presents at home. We don't open presents at the party. We open presents at home. So he's been playing with our kid on the playground, comes back and is like, what do you think about opening presents at here now? And I'm like, well, we usually do it at home. I don't think that's a good idea. We're at the park. We're outside. Well, I already said that he could, and I wanted him to do this. And I think that you're right there, just started picking a fight. He didn't ask because he cared. He already made up his mind. And at this point, because we were separated and I was working, it was fresh, like we were freshly separated. And I still had a lot of big emotions about it. I was annoyed because it's like, you're picking a fight in front. And that's the other thing. They pick fights in front of people. They do it when you are at your, like where you don't want to, whether it's in public, they try to humiliate you in public. They try to demean you in front of other people. And they know that you maybe, because for me, like I wanted to set a rule, like we don't fight in front of our kid. We don't fight out in public. This is stuff that we can take time away. And I go to bed at a certain time. Those are all things that he pushed, all things that he, you know, he'd fight in front of the kid. He'd fight in front of our friends and out in public. He'd fight into the wee hours of the morning. We can keep me up all night. He wouldn't let me go to work. Like these are all things that just are toxic. They're toxic. So if you have anybody who starts to do these question games and starts to like not accept your answers, like your answer is enough. Your answer is your answer. You don't have to like explain yourself. And that's the other thing. Like if I started to explain myself, you don't have to explain yourself. You never win. You never win. If you notice that you start to walk away from these conversations feeling worse than you went in, if you notice that no matter what your answer is, it still causes a fight. And if you notice these kinds of things, you need to end the relationship. Don't bother with it anymore because it doesn't get better. It gets worse. This person doesn't change. They don't realize it. And sometimes they'll act like they do and they'll apologize. And at the very early stages when they're still trying to woo you and you're still like, you're just starting to realize that maybe this person's a little bit off, something's not quite right, but you're like, but they were so good, they were so romantic, they were so whatever, the love bombing and all of that. They're pulling you into their trauma bond. So they're going to apologize quicker in the early stages, but it doesn't go away. So just really be mindful. If this is somebody, and I said it in the argumentative red flag, but the questions, if somebody can't accept your answer to a question, they don't accept you. Your answer, your emotions, your feelings, your perspectives are valid because they're yours. They're based on your experience. If somebody can't accept that, they're not accepting you as a person. You deserve better. You deserve somebody who's okay with you as a person, who can accept that, and who can accept the differences. You don't have to agree with people all the time. You don't have to be one person. You're not meant to. That other person who's asking the questions is allowed to also have their own independent views and thoughts and feelings. And you can respect each other. That's healthy. It's super healthy to not always agree with somebody and have very different things, but know how to draw the lines and be okay with it. So if this person is just berating you with questions, get out, don't bother. It's not worth it. They will suck you dry. Your energy will disappear, and your confidence and self-worth and all of that will come under fire. You can do better. You are worth it. You are enough all by yourself. Thank you for listening. I hope this helps. Bye.